Hello, 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 everybody. We're going to wait for people to kind of trickle on in before we get started here. But in a minute, we're going to talk to two guests, one very special guest, and one guest that should always be here, but she's not here, but she's here now. So we're going to keep her here. My name is John Aspinall, brand evangelist here at PickFu, and we are talking today with Monica with MaryRuth's, and we have Adrian, the marketing head over here for PickFu as well. It's going to chime in with all the questions and keep me on track so I'm not flying all over the place. But guys, as we're coming in here, I see some people starting to trickle in. Once you're in here, drop your favorite emoji. I don't really know. So we know that you're here, and we're going to run some Q&As at the end. But today we're really going to pick the brain of a monster brand like MaryRuth's on how they're using PickFu in their daily operation flow when it comes to growing and scaling on Amazon. I, if you must be sleeping under a rock, or I don't know where you are if you haven't heard of MaryRuth's and understanding the mass appeal and scale that they have in the market. But yeah, Monica, please introduce yourself and let everyone know what you do at MaryRuth's, and yeah, we're going to hop into it.
Sounds good. Thanks, John. Thanks, Adrian, for having us. We're super excited to chat. PickFu is a tool that we're using more and more. I feel like on the daily, it's growing in the capacity that our team is using it for. So just really excited to dive into some of the insights that we have prepped for today. So yeah, I'm Monica. I'm senior manager here at MaryRuth's on our retention and e-commerce team. If you don't know us, like John said, if you're not familiar with the brand, we specialize in wholesome and quality vitamins and supplements for all life stages. So ranging from toddlers, teens, adults, 40 plus. That includes liquids, gummies, capsules, all different formats. We are best known for our liquid vitamin, multivitamin. The raspberry flavor was the first one that Mary Ruth formulated 14 years ago, and we've just been evolving and growing ever since. We are a B Corp certified company, something Mary Ruth is very passionate about. Side note, Mary Ruth is a real person, which I think is something that people always love to learn and know, which I think just is like the backbone of the passion that we as a brand have. She's formulating these vitamins for herself, for her kids, her family. So that passion that she instills in us trickles out into every single, message we send out to consumers. We really want to make sure that they know that we're here to just help be a little step in their wellness routine and overall just help them move forward every day, whether that's in their AM routine, their PM routine, anything in between. So that's Mary Ruth's. And then on the Amazon side of things, so the team I work on, gosh, we handle all things of the craziness of deal days, prime days, down to the nitty gritty of looking at mid drivers, some of which we'll look at today, just to find those nuances, nitpicking some details, isolating some variables and product titles and copy descriptions and product carousels, A plus content, all the things to optimize it, to constantly grow, constantly get better. That's our goal every day. So yeah, I'm excited to dive in and chat more.
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen in a second. We're going to go over it, but I must say, like, I would never in a million, because I'm not the kind of person that's going to go out and buy things that I need, right? I know we're going to talk about it in a little bit, but my wife is like the main, if there was a buyer for a company, my wife is the buyer, right? So she introduced me to Mary Ruth years ago, and it was just like, here, drink this, here, chew this, here, take this. And I would never in a million years just go out and think like to do that, right? But it's become a staple in our house where it's like the multivitamin, like the liquid multivitamin, it's like it's not negotiable. Like that's on subscribe and save for sure, right? So we know when we're out because we have another one coming in. But before we hop into this, a little off script, we were talking beforehand, but how did Prime Day go for you guys? I know, we are talking about Prime Day, just rather Prime Week as it feels, right? Because it's not no longer just one day. But how did it go for you guys before we get into this a little bit?
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like it's still a hot topic. The 4 days that they surprised us with this year is what everyone was talking about. It performed well for us. I do think, from the shopper perspective, and I can even speak for myself personally, it seemed less exciting to me, to be totally honest, having it be a little bit longer. And as we know, other platforms, other marketplaces are constantly price matching Amazon, and that's been catching up more and more. So I do think Prime Day always used to feel like Christmas in July, and sometimes I feel like it might be losing a little bit of that effect and some of the momentum. But regardless, I will say, it was a strong Prime Day for us, definitely.
That's
Excitement was high,
good.
especially on day one, day two. And then it's, the 4 days was something new for us. So we'll see if they continue it again next year. But it seems like some brands had different things to say. Some did really well. Some were like, damn, I wish, we stuck with the 2 days and like that excitement driver. But yeah, it was good for us.
That's awesome. And last note on this, and everyone's like, just get to it. But I know being in the space for a while that, there's ebbs and flows and seasonality, but, Mary Ruth's is like a staple. It's an evergreen kind of thing. But I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I want everyone else out there that's in the supplement space, CPG, consumable space, focused on health and wellness. Is it fair to say that the whole after Christmas, New Year's, New Year, New Me is a real thing?
Yes, for sure. We
It
call
is.
Q1 our Super Bowl.
That's what I figured. And a lot of people, in, you know, Q4, where it's like November, December, they're looking at it like, oh, everyone's buying air fryers and gifts and stuff like that. But that new year, new me, those new year resolutions, people, and you're confirming it, like people really just like, I need to be healthier. And I think that when you snag them, for lack of a better term, with like something like subscribe and save, that's going to keep that resolution kind of in the front of their minds where they're like, okay, I need to eat healthier. I need to take these vitamins. I need to have better wellness. So awesome. So let me share my screen right here. I'm going to do the typical, hey, can you see my screen? Because, that's what I do.
Yes, you're good.
Cool. Awesome. Guys, so right here, we're going to be looking into the testing playbook. So how Mary Ruth's we have a bunch of examples in here that Monica's going to walk us through, and Adrian's going to keep us on the path because I deviate like we're doing right now. So understanding with some examples how they're testing using PickFu, but more importantly, why, right? So why did we do this? What did we learn? And then did we take it into action? And all this kind of good stuff, right? So taking a look here to keep us on track, what we're going to cover, we get intro and their testing, a couple of examples going on over here, three examples to be exact, right? And we already jumped the gun here, as John Aspinall typically does. So we talked about who I am and what I do. Adrian, we should have put your picture over here. We forced you to be on camera, but it's okay. Next time we're going to get you in the slide over here. And Monica talked about what she does. Monica, while we're on this slide really quickly, how big is the team at Mary Ruth's? Like how big is like your team and ecom, but then how big is the org overall?
Yeah, the team I work on is about 12 people, I want to say. Marketing team is a bit bigger, 50-ish. And yeah, the larger team, gosh, a few hundred, I want to say. So we're definitely growing. It's been a very few exciting recent few years. Yeah, we're just trying to grow faster and better every day.
And I ask that because I think it's important for people that are smaller orgs or even larger orgs understanding where PickFu can fit with them, right? So it's not just, hey, we're just getting started on Amazon. It's larger organizations like yourself that are using it all the time to really make those data-driven decisions.
For sure.
Cool. So the first example we have is we're talking about stagnant listing investigation and new product launch. Before we jump in the slides, Monica, can you tell me a little bit about what the intent was with this example and what did you learn and then what really was actionable before we kind of pull it up?
Yeah, sure. So, kind of going off of what I was saying before. So, kids products is a huge category for us. Definitely so on Amazon. Our kids products consistently are in our, top sellers, rank on Amazon. And so our gripe water launch was very exciting for us. We came out with just a regular gripe water product, and we also came out with a nighttime version that had a little bit of chamomile in the formulation of it. We launched them together at the same time in tandem with each other as separate listings, though, like not in any bundles or anything. And we were really curious of how it was going to be perceived on the market. Gripe water, can kind of be considered a niche product. It typically is something that no one knows about until you need it with a crying baby at night, right?
Me, I am the ICP number one. You guys should sell it by the 5 gallon jug at this point.
Yes, exactly. And that's what we hear, that it was again like a niche product. You don't totally know what it is, but then when you need it, it's something that you're going to be very interested in buying. So we were very excited. So for us, we're always trying to stay ahead of the curve. And for when we launch a product, we don't want to just, launch day is the end of the cycle, right? We want to continue really staying close to that product, checking in on it at the 30, 60, 90 plus day mark of performance, always fine tuning. And like I said before, always trying to find optimizations of just where we can pivot slightly every day to make something better. So having said that, when we launched Gripe Water, and leveraging PickFu, we knew that we were really going to be able to find value in your tool of using it to see how Gripe Water was performing initially. I know we have some visuals of both that, regular daytime, I'll call it for lack of a better, but just our regular gripe water product, and then that nighttime variation. So we set out to run this as a series. We really wanted to just first and foremost start to get first impressions of the listing itself. In the listing product title, we call out that we're USDA organic, things that, typically previous shoppers of us are, very in tune to, and is, one of the qualities of us as a brand that keeps people coming back is, that certification of being USDA organic. And then having the ratings, of course, the price included. PickFu is a great tool in creating these little mock-ups when you're creating these polls. You can kind of just make a variation of what the listing actually looks like. So when people are answering your poll, they get a nice visual of what a typical like listing page on Amazon would look like. So you really are getting like the most first impression, like that subconscious or conscious reaction to it. So yeah, we started with our first impressions, and from there we started to like really deviate a little bit more and get a little bit more nitty gritty on things like people were reacting to the color of the product, understanding what it was for. And you could definitely see in some of the responses, people who were aware of gripe water and interested in gripe water, talking about things of like, I would love to buy this as a bundle option, versus some people who have never heard of gripe water. And again, that concept of, okay, this is a niche product for us, for, some shoppers at least, definitely came into account. So it was just, we used the series of polls as a context marker for us to really like just give more color to the picture post launch. And I know you'll go through some of them, but we're, just constantly navigating some of the copy changes we can make to better explain the product. Again, speaking to those people who may not be aware of what gripe water is, new moms potentially, which again is a huge shopping demographic for us. So overall, PickFu was just very helpful in that series of finding how we can just continue optimizing.
That's awesome. So, like, and we're going to take a look at this one specifically over here, which is a multi-question survey, which I love. But before we take a look at that, my question, which I didn't ask earlier, was before PickFu, how would this process normally look? And now that you're using PickFu, how much better, easier, streamlined is the process?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, before PickFu, it was, kind of like a set it and see how it goes kind of a thing. Amazon is a monster of a selling channel, and so you don't have to sit too long to see how consumers are responding to something. We would test, make things live, watch how sales were going in a day, a week, a month, perhaps, and then fine tune from there. PickFu, I think what it's doing for us is just kind of really minimizing that timeline, and we're getting a little bit more offensive than defensive. We're able to right off the bat from a launch, ask people's perception of the product, get their first impressions. What we can do and what we're starting to do for future launches is actually ask people before it launches, getting people's perspectives on, the packaging, the title, all of that good stuff. So to your point, I think what PickFu is doing for us is just minimizing the time of, what we need to really gather insights that we can make action on.
That's awesome because in e-commerce, we all know time is money, right? So if you were to iterate on Amazon and you're learning out the rough way that something's not working, and if you can avoid doing that and avoid spending ad dollars and all those kind of painful financial things with trying to learn if a product's going to work or what's not going to work,
Mhm.
I think it's definitely a great solution. So walk me through this one right here. So I know this is a multi-question survey. So we have the open-ended version, we have the ranked version, and then we have more of a head-to-head. But walk me through on this one specifically, what we were looking for and what you actually obtained from this, and was it actionable?
Yeah, so kind of reiterating what I said before of just like, we wanted to set up a series of questions where first and foremost, like we just get your first reactions. We want to just know, and that kind of also helped us filter the responses thereafter, like what I was saying before of like, do people know what gripe water is? Because that definitely you could see like set the tone of people's open-ended responses and then also what they were selecting in the multi-select here.
Yeah.
Um, for question two, yeah, we selected people that, are kind of big players in the space already that have had gripe water. That, just we want to know as a very new product, didn't really have a lot of reviews on it yet. Like, how did we stack up against it? Right. And so we were pleased to see that, just due to our brand recognition, the packaging, some of the certifications that we have, it really did speak to people responding positively to our product for sure.
And I think it's interesting too when you look at this because you guys are priced for the solution of gripe water 17.95 or 99, and then everyone else is cheaper, right? So do you find when you run the PickFus that a portion of the positive choices or responses in your favor is due to being Mary Ruth's and being a large brand, or is it like are you finding that you can charge more than a competitor when you look at like data like this because of the brand name? Is that play any part in it too, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not that we're trying to charge more. It just, comes naturally when we're developing a sound quality product. To your point of people having that brand recognition, yes, a lot of the responses will be like, oh, I know Mary Ruth's. I know that it means quality. I know that, it's a brand that invests in clean label project certifications and third-party testing. So the higher price point to me is, verified, validated. I trust it. I'll select it regardless of that higher ticketed price. So I do think that has a play with it as well. And, we're proud of that for sure at Mary Ruth's. Although I will say, bringing it back to PickFu, I really appreciate the polling options that, we have when we're creating these polls within that, mock-up listings, because you can actually toggle on or off showing the price in these.
Yeah.
And so for us, when we did this first iteration, like we wanted to be like, okay, let's show the ratings, the titles, like main image, and then the price, again, just from the standpoint of like, let's unfiltered, let's get all the first impressions. We've actually discussed internally running a few of these again, not necessarily on this product, but a few others of turning off that product price. I know we'll get into a few examples later on
Yeah.
where we have a bit more shown example of price sensitivity, but again, PickFu is just a really strong tool of honing in on price, showing price, not showing price, so you can really get good first impressions based off of that.
No, and I think that's super important, being able to be the standard and be the brand name and seeing as to what I look at it sometimes when I look at polls for brands, I don't always look at it as like, okay, why are we crushing it? I almost look at it like, why are we not crushing it over here? Like,
Mhm.
what is it about people, these products that people are going with it? And I just want to pull this portion up over here, which is the AI highlights and like a little bit of themes, right? So like this is you guys, B is, mommy's bliss, which is like, in this poll, like the next one up. So like looking at like the likes and the dislikes, right? So, people that were going with this was affordable pricing, package conveys professionalism. But with you guys, it's appealing, trustworthy, brand familiarity. So that's what I'm talking about, having that brand awareness, which I
Mhm.
think is huge and super strong. But then also looking at like, okay, like how could we win these guys in this poll? And is it really worth our time? And I think that also comes into like demographics, right? So looking at the demographics a little bit more further and understanding who's saying they like this one, and is that
Right.
really the ICP that we're going after? And if it's not, then it's not even worth our time to even try because they're not really the ICP per se, right? Does that make sense?
For sure. And I mean, in this example, like the people that are like, why would I spend that much money on a product I don't even know what it is? It's like, okay, we're able to filter those out and,
Yeah.
know where to put merit.
So
Can
I
I
think,
jump in for 1 second here? Because we have actually a relevant question about that same
awesome.
topic that someone
Yeah.
just asked in the chat. Robert asked, did you filter your audience for female and or prime members? It looks like you just did 50 random. If so, why didn't you filter more towards your audience for this test?
Yeah, again, speaks to like we wanted the most raw first impressions. Let's just get anybody. Um, and then we kind of filtered then further from there. To speak on like the demographics capabilities of PickFu, we definitely leverage those all the time where we see applicable. And I know we'll get into a few other
Yeah.
too.
So let's go through this one, the next one. So this is then we take a ranked, right? So now, I'm sorry, then we do a head to head. So after the ranked question three, we're doing a head to head. So talk me through this one a little bit more.
Yeah, and this came from, typically when we have a product launch, we have just one product, right? This one came in tandem with the two of them working together, but we didn't position them as a bundle, just, separated, standalone, let's see how they perform. And it's been really interesting too, because again, like we talk about gripe water being kind of a niche product, then you get to nighttime gripe water, then it's like, okay, then what the heck is the difference between a regular gripe water and a nighttime gripe water? So we really wanted to, again, just isolate the two, get raw, honest feedback from everyone and anyone of understanding what this type of product is and the positioning of it, how the listing looks, just so we can start to have, some thought starters of where we can navigate next for further optimizations. We weren't surprised, I'll be totally candid to say that the regular one won. It was, fun to kind of read some responses of people speaking to the branding color and the way that the bottle's merchandised and all of that good stuff. And we definitely did see, people would be interested in purchasing like them as a bundle. They saw the benefit of the two working together. But again, when you look further into those demographics, it was typically likely moms have already have kids, maybe a young one currently, who are very much in that niche of knowing and being interested in shopping for gripe water.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too, the folks in the responses, we're talking more about the color, right?
Mhm.
Not per se that this is not nighttime and this is nighttime, right? So understanding that, did that have any effect on either the I'll call it daytime for lack of a better term, daytime gripe water or the nighttime one when it came to those people that were referencing color?
Not necessarily. It was just something that we kept in mind when we were like kind of growing through. And again, this was just like that first one. We weren't expecting to get like, super hard cut data that we were going to stick to going forward. We really just wanted to get first impressions. If anything, it also just created that opportunity that we see in PickFu of, this could be a tool that we leverage before we even bring a product to market. Like let's, leverage it through our creative team as they're creating different iterations of a product label. Let's send it out. Again, first raw impressions to then help in our product innovation and development prior to launches too.
Yeah, I think that's definitely important. And I know from talking with you, I know your team doesn't handle the product development and that kind of stuff. Basically, you're given the product that's, hey, we're doing this, and how can we go to market with it the best? But I think that's important for folks to know that not only does your team do it for, go to market and launch and optimization, but then also the product development and understanding, do people want this? Do they need this? Is it resonating with them? Make sense?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to, circle back to Robert's question from earlier, like having the various opportunities and different ways to target in the demographics in PickFu, like you can really hone in on whatever use case you have for that poll, find the right people that you really want to pull.
Yeah, I think Adrian, what are we at? Like 90 plus traits, 100 plus traits? We're at
Yeah, I think we're at over 100 now. We always
over
said 90
100
plus before,
traits
but
that you can drill down to. Side note, we have one called Heartland. And I don't know. I've asked multiple times. I think it's like a specific part of the country. Adrian, is that right? The Heartland trait that we have? I think that
honestly, I cannot remember. I think that was
that's
a specific customer request at one point, if I
Oh, that's like, well,
remember
then I shouldn't
correctly.
have said that. Sorry. But like, I'm just giving an example of how deep those traits do go. It gets really, really deep. So you're able to put it in front. Anyway, so Monica, walk me through this. So this is the next one. So survey two with nighttime gripe water.
Yeah, no, so we, that first one that we ran on, like you said, the daytime, for lack of a better, we ran on the nighttime as well. It was really interesting to see, honestly, kind of the conversation that we started of, we weren't necessarily looking for feedback on our packaging and the product, or excuse me, the color palette that we used on the product. But it was really interesting feedback that we got of just like, again, when you set out to get raw first impressions from people, you get things that maybe you didn't even think of, and that subconscious first impression of, oh, a darker color palette, subconsciously I'm going to insinuate with a nighttime product. So if you're asking me, what am I most appealing to for a nighttime product, I'm going to naturally gravitate towards that one.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because if you look at like anything, I know we're saying daytime, nighttime, but like I don't think you'd ever want to call it daytime because that's automatically associated with like the cold and flu and NyQuil and stuff like that,
Right.
right? So you don't want to call it daytime. But Anytime it's associated with like sleep and stuff like that, I am seeing like on the Amazon SERP and search engine result page, a lot of these darker purples, darker blues,
Mm-hmm.
because it's more of that sleepy time, better rest and stuff like that. So looking at this one right here, what did we learn and take away from this one?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely opened up conversations internally of like what we just said of, leveraging PickFu as a tool for our creative team at, an earlier point in the process potentially, but it also showed our team the opportunity of, okay, if the main image for the product is not necessarily grabbing people, it's on us to find a better way to grab them in the product title, in pushing for more reviews, really showcasing the right things and the bullet points, A+ content, everything else that you can leverage on an Amazon listing is definitely, room for us to play and room for us to grow. So it definitely, challenged us of, okay, like people are more subconsciously, for whatever reason it may be, gravitating towards this one. How can we optimize ours to compete better with the other?
Yeah. So if I'm understanding that right, so something like this, it never came to the point of right now we need to change our packaging, make it darker. It's now we understand that they're gravitating towards the darker in this example, right? But what other avenues can we then optimize, like the title, like the SEO, like anything else outside of it to circumvent, to mitigate and abate that? Is that correct?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, all brands selling on Amazon, you have to stick to that same template that we all have, in the thumbnail that you get view on the product listing page and then your PDP. It all looks the same. It's up to you and your strategy to really stand out. And so for us, it, was an opportunity for us to get better. And how can we optimize those other placements to get this listing to be more competitive? Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting too, because it's not like you learned from this data from PickFu that, okay, everyone's gravitating towards darker. So it's not like you went and revamped the packaging and it's like, oh, we're just going to go darker because, so I think it's a great way to understand the data and not just say, okay, they're gravitating towards darker. Let's make our packaging darker and maybe go against brand guidelines and anything like that. But it's more of like, okay, this is where they're going. What else can we optimize to put and better resonate with them, the fact that it's, for better sleep, for nighttime and that kind of thing. I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. And here we go. We're going into the next example. So example 2, we're talking about optimizing mid-drivers and demographic testing. So understanding we're going to go through these, give a high level of what the goal was with these, and what did you kind of go into it looking to get, and what did you get out of it?
Yeah, for sure. This one, again, was a series. We pulled a few different products. We'll look at, I believe, our probiotics first, of our gummies. We have a few different formats, but our gummies first, and then again, another one of our oil of oregano, which we'll talk a little bit more about. But basically, these products were selected based on being what we kind of call like mid-drivers, right? Like they do well for us. And, we ask ourselves, why can't they do better? Or can they do better? How can we make them do better? So this is where we really wanted to hone in on, again, a product that is very well known and loved in retail spaces for us, other marketplaces for us on our website specifically too. And so let's just see how it's stacking up again. This one, I believe we're showcasing the differences that we saw when we were pulling against men and women. This was really interesting for us, right? Because as we kind of spoke at the top, our demographic is primarily female, right? Most likely a millennial mom shopping for herself and for her family, her kids, her husband, whoever that may be, her parents even. So for us, we wanted to kind of hone in on these mid drivers and take away that variable almost. Like let's take out, in one instance when we looked at specifically the men. Is that the one you're on? Yes, perfect. Take away like our strongest demographic and let's just see what, men impressions are on these products, how they compare against competitors. And what we saw was they were very price sensitive, more so than female shoppers were. Similar trends, but it definitely stuck out more so when we did our men's version of the poll. And again, just a great call out for the power of PickFu when you're leveraging the different demographic capabilities of it. You can, we cloned these polls. We did the exact same thing and we ran it against a female audience versus a male audience. And we were able to kind of, pick through those nuances between the two of what we got back.
And we were talking about this before we jumped on the live, and it's 100% true because in my household, my wife buys all the stuff. That's how I know about Mary Ruth's, because she buys it and I take it. I don't ask any questions. I just do it. Right. So when one key thing that I saw down here for the likes, right? Recognized brand with trustworthy reputation among respondents. Because I feel like that brand, right, runs the gamut of a whole bunch of different supplements besides a probiotic that's in a brick and mortar
Mhm.
store that a
Yeah.
man might see, right? Versus, not saying Mary Ruth isn't everywhere, right? But if I was shopping for zinc or magnesium or something like that brand also has that. So I think from that aspect, that's where that avatar for the male, which is basically me, is going towards, right? But it's so true because I don't do those kind of purchases in my house. My wife does. And when she buys something that's more expensive than I thought, I would go for it. Doesn't matter, right? Because then I'm still taking it and now I'm hooked and I'm in that whole process and regiment and stuff like that. So I think looking at it from this perspective, right, and understanding who the ICP is, right, you're never going to go down to a $7 price point, because that's not your ICP. And even if it was, there's a lot more value prop that's inside of it.
Mhm.
But then when we take a look at this one, which, like you said, was the exact same one, but just based on women, right? So we see this here, right? So we're getting a little bit more, but then understanding when the AI highlights right down here, because I love these AI highlights, right? So it's not so much about the brand, but it's still about price a little bit. So when you looked at these two, what did you guys take away from this?
Exactly to your point of like, okay, if we see a winner taking on that conversation of the merit, like how much do we really want to give that? Is it something that we want to, like on the previous example with the gripe water, like do we want to sacrifice our brand guidelines, our vision, and go for a darker color palette? Or is there a better way for us to find where we can be successful against competitors? Same thing here when it comes to price. Just based on the quality and the, wholesome, clean ingredients that we have in our product, we're not willing to sacrifice that just for the sake of a lower price point. And that's exactly, the type of customer that we want to speak to and resonate with. Of
Yeah.
course, we want to be accessible. One of our core missions is accessible wellness. And again, just how could we help you move forward every day by being a simple step in your everyday routine? So all of that kind of comes into play. But again, like these polls are just really great for us to give more context to that conversation when we're building out those strategies.
Do you
And I
ever
think,
find, yeah,
oh,
do you ever
sorry.
find that when you're running these, because now that I'm looking at them a little bit further that we're talking, when you're running something against like a capsule versus a gummy,
That's
how
what
do
I
you
was just going
use?
to say.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
It that definitely comes into play too. So that kind of comes with, again, just like the idea of we don't think of one poll as like a set it and forget it. We think of PickFu as series of polls for us. So when we're like, okay, like we want to test the probiotic gummies, like it's a series of polls that we're going to be approaching with that with. And so I know we don't have them here with us today, but that was then the next iteration. It's like, okay, what's our next poll then? Do we toggle off price point? And do we see if men still respond the exact same way? Is option C still preferable for them? And then also the next iteration, exactly to your point, our minds were thinking at the same time of, do we limit to single format across all use cases, or of the options that you give pollsters? So I don't know, we kind of go back and forth on that one just because when you do search like probiotic for men or probiotic for like whatever your search title may be, may not include format. And so when you get your search results on Amazon, it's going to be a plethora of gummies, liquid, capsules, all the things. So it's kind of like we need to find that right balance. Our gummies does need to compete well against other formats. But then, of course, too, we want to take a look at that strategy of gummy to gummy, us
Yeah.
versus competitors as well.
Because I think it's important for gummies too. Like there's a lot of things that are gummies now, right? Outside of your genre, there's like the creatine gummies, there's the apple cider vinegar gummies, and it's a just an easier way to deploy a solution. But then it runs the gamut of does this taste good, right? So
Right.
I think for a gummy standpoint, I think you're spot on because you don't want to just look at it just the gummies, right? But then what happens if someone's taking a capsule and they're just I'm sick and tired of this. It's boring. I
Mhm.
don't like swallowing it. And then now they're exposed to you guys doing the gummies. I think that's super important to just not look at it from the gummies per se by themselves, which you should do anyway. Like you said, that whole system and
Right.
process. But understanding how can you win over someone that needs probiotics and wants probiotics that's historically done the capsule or the pill or the tablet.
Exactly. Yeah. And I will say we do pride ourselves on having very delicious liquids and gummies specifically for those
They
people
are. They're very, very delicious. And
wanting to
and
come over. Yeah.
I've had some other gummies in the past for health and wellness, and I was looking at my wife chewing them, and they were not Mary Ruth's, and I said, "Do I have to swallow this?" And she said, "Yeah, you do." I was like, "Let's remove that from subscribe and save." But cool. So now we're getting into oil of oregano, which I've seen all over TikTok. So, and as you see viral on TikTok, right? So just walk me through this a little bit, and we're going to take a look at the polls themselves. But overarching kind of idea, like what was the goal and what did we learn?
Yeah, so when we kind of started with this idea of okay, mid drivers, like what do we want to look at? Which ones should we really care about right now? We were seeing a moment of virality on TikTok, and we've seen a lot of great halo effect success, I'll say, on Amazon, just because we do have a really strong channel within TikTok and TikTok Shop. And so we're seeing that, act as a really strong awareness channel as well. And then people are then coming to Amazon to actually buy. So us as a team, we want to make sure that we're working really closely in tandem with each other of what's hot right now, what's going on right now, what are people loving. Of course, working through out of stocks when we have a moment of virality is always a real problem that we have to work through, but we always somehow get through it, and just making sure that we're prepared for it. And popularity of a product is something that's really important to just always stay in tune to. So for us, bringing that all back down, when we were looking at mid drivers, oil of oregano was one of, okay, it's having a moment on TikTok. It was um you know, people were loving it, people were shopping it very quickly. And so we wanted to almost kind of get on that offensive, like we talked about, moving away from defensive to offensive and prep for what we know is a halo effect onto shopping on Amazon from seeing it on TikTok. And again, just run one of these initial findings polls. I think what we started to talk about in terms of format definitely plays a role here. Our oil of oregano is liquid, it's in the dropper bottle on the left. I think the other two are both capsules. One of which is a very large portion, like it comes with a very long day supply, versus us and the other one. So it was just very interesting to see again, like let's take that virality moment, the popularity that it's having on TikTok, let's almost prep for it right on the Amazon side. Let's see what people are thinking about of the format. Let's see any other potential findings we could tap into just to, again, optimize it and prep for hopefully continued popularity and virality.
Yeah, I know we're looking at the specific one for men and we have the women as well. But like I always like to go here and take a
Mhm.
look at age and income. I think these are super important to look at when analyzing the data, right? Because if we come back over here, we have you guys as blue and then the winner of this one for men as yellow, right? So coming down here, like, okay, when we look at this one, right, 35 to 44-year-olds almost prefer you to them, right? So looking at that data and understanding, is that more of the avatar, right? Talking about millennials and that kind of thing compared to, other folks that are inside here, right? Let's say 45 to 54-year-olds, which it's a blur right now. I'll be 42. I think I'm a millennial. I think I'm at like the cusp, but understanding that, right? You could see over here that people a little bit older are preferring this, right? But the people directly in your avatar, like ICP, are preferring you guys. So I think that's why I think it's super important not just to look at the high level summary, but
For
looking at that
sure.
granular data, even down to income, which is
Mm.
super, super important, especially when there's a winner that's a low ticket price, because you're going to find households that are 0 to 35K are going to lean towards the lower price point, right? But now if you look at it, and that's like the power of PickFu is just uncovering all the different layers, right, of all the data, because now we take a look and we see 35 to 44-year-olds that are 75 to 150K actually do prefer you guys, right? Compared to that cheaper competition in this in the poll. So that's why I like to go and look at this, because it's like, okay, if people typically don't have the disposable income to go and buy my product, that's okay, that's fine. But maybe their opinion won't sway me too much as a brand owner on what I'm going to do with marketing dollars or anything like that. Have you guys, is that part of the process too?
Definitely, like to your point of the power of PickFu, like when we run these polls, we see winners. We don't just look at the top. If something is highlighted as a winner and it's not necessarily us, that's not potentially bad news. We really appreciate the ability to go in and see the granular details, like exactly what you're pulling out here. And it goes back to the conversation we had before of like, okay, if we're losing, quote unquote, in some area, how much merit do we really want to give that?
Yeah,
Is it something that we need to put effort into actually fixing? Or are we on the right track? And again, PickFu is just that provider of context, like I was saying before. So it's been very valuable for us to, verify things that, we think are on the right track, like proving our hypotheses in some sense, in some senses, and validating where else could we go next for further optimizations.
totally. So let's go over here. And this one. So this one was interesting. So this one was a vitamin C supplement, the listing title comparison between men and women. Now, I find this really interesting because historically, you would think, or a lot of people in the space of e-com agencies, brand owners, always like to take their titles and make sure they're SEO packed, right? Just SEO, keywords, all that kind of stuff there. But this is a great example of how you guys are using it from what people are wanting to read. So it's not so much a matter of like, hey, what can we put in here to show up number one? At the end of the day, you guys know that you're at the top for pretty much the most part anyway, regardless if it's paid or organic, right? So I think this is a great example about understanding what people need to see versus what they would like to see, right? What's super important and paramount for them to make the click, make the purchase, make the add to cart. So just walk me through this a little bit because I find this really interesting when it comes to titles.
Yeah, no, I love this one. And, we've been talking a lot about PickFu being a platform for us to test us against competitors. We also really use it to test us against ourselves, right? And so this is a great example of that. For us, we really wanted to isolate some variables within our product title. Because again, to your point, people spend a lot of times on their product titles, honing in on what exactly is gonna, make people, first of all, make it rank and then make people click, of course. So for us, this one was really fun just because I love to call it like this, the winner, the second column, and then that last column on the right in fourth place. 60-day supply, 2 month supply is the same thing. It's just a different way of phrasing it, different way of wording it. And so for us, like I said, like kind of pulling us against ourselves, we're always trying to find just those nuances within our copy. That'll just resonate with consumers more, make them more interested to click.
Yeah,
This was an example too of men versus women. And we were very, it was really cool to see very comparable responses. So for us, it was something that we had a lot of confidence in moving forward with to make this change.
I thought it was interesting too. A couple, and then we're going to take a look at the polls. I thought it was interesting because I'm a big fan of what you guys are doing because I always tell people pick the larger number because when it's 2 months, it's 60 days, right? So 2 months sounds like two, but 60 days sounds like a lot more than what it really is, even though it's exactly the same number. So it's interesting to see that that was the winner, right? For the most part, compared to like the 2 month supply over here. But the other thing that's really interesting as well is the little nuances of just one gummy daily or only one gummy daily. I think there's like a lot of power in words where it's like only almost sounds in a way limiting, but just makes it sound like effortless, right? So let me pull up the polls and we can walk through those a little bit more too, because I'm super curious. So with this one, right? So this was for men. So we found this out here. Now, is this something per se? So where does it go in the process? So let's say this was the winner for men, and then we're going to take a look at the next one for women. If you're finding that they're like in this example, exactly dead on, right? What does it look like then? Do you guys then roll it out? Do you then roll it out into like an MYE, manager experiment on Amazon? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, it does go through like a bit more internal conversation. Of course, being a vitamin and supplement company, we need to make sure that we're always staying as compliant as possible. We do have, very strict guidelines to stay within. And so whenever we are making a copy change, we kind of pass it through our copywriter, our internal, checks in that sense. But for us, it depends too, like on how confident we are in starting the change. So for us, this would just go right ahead to be live, and then we just keep an eye on it in the first few days, see how it performs, and then of course just always fine tuning and optimizing from there.
Yeah. So I just want to take a look at the responses on the mail one over here. Um, See, exactly like I said, just one gummy daily, right? It's almost like effortless, and it's so funny that I didn't see this beforehand. By the way, I mean I saw it, but I didn't go into the responses. But the fact that someone they keep on referencing just one gummy daily, so I think those kind of nuanced words make it seem very effortless for folks. But then again, when we go over here, right? This is the winner again, right? But the reason might be different than why men are choosing it. So I think that that's also important to take a look at as well. So when you come down here for this one, letting me know that it's 60 day, 60 day, 60 day, right? So it appears like for women, they're more concerned with, again, this is me high level looking at it, the value inside of it, right? But for men, it seems from the few that we pulled up there, they like the ease of use. So it's kind of interesting to see the data between that. Um, yeah. Anything more on this before we go to the next one?
No, I think you said it perfectly.
Yeah, it's super. And I'm just gonna say it. Adrian's probably gonna yell at me afterwards, but I'm gonna say it, Adrian. So like with this data over here, understanding that if you guys went live with like the 60-day supply, is there a PickFu in the ether that may come out down the road where maybe instead of 2 months supply over here, you guys run with 60-day supply, seeing that in the title, it did
Mm.
perform better than the 2 month? Just me doing my John Aspinall poking out there. So
Yes. I mean, honestly, every poll that we have, we think of 10 plus more iterations of it.
yeah.
So yeah, creative changes like that always are things that, we're thinking of for sure.
Cool. And before we hop on to the next one, I just want to, we talked about this yesterday, but also how you guys do the bottle on the left, box on the right. I think that's super strong. Being that a lot of people in the space are doing the opposite. Things like pattern interrupts are huge. And I know you've tested a ton of that stuff in PickFu, but I just wanted to call that out there as being something important. So this is weekly recurring insights. So tell us exactly, and we're going to show it in a second on the screenshot, but tell us exactly why you guys do this and why it's so powerful to understand in a weekly reoccurring way certain data points and certain polls like that.
Yeah, and honestly, I feel like I kind of gave it away in the last one of just like we're really trying to use PickFu as a thought starter for us because every time we get responses back, we think of new iterations of polls that we hadn't necessarily thought of before. And so for, us, we have someone designated on the team who's really focusing within PickFu, and she's constantly pulling products that we want to look more into. Again, like ones that perform well for us, but think that we could, get to perform even better. We're testing them against ourselves. We're testing them against competitors, other big players within market share of whatever product category that may be. And we have these running on a recurring weekly basis. Sometimes it could be a lot to look through, I'll be totally honest, but more data to sift through is better than none. And so we really appreciate, again, like this capability within PickFu for us to leverage lots of great data constantly coming in, like I said, on a weekly basis of, hey, this looks interesting, or hey, we hadn't thought about this yet. Is there a better way for us to phrase this in the product title? Maybe we can see some movement on it. And so for us, it's just kind of like a weekly check-in. And it's ever changing our outlining plans, our iteration plans of what we're kind of looking to do in those poll series on PickFu.
And then typically with something like this, you guys have how many SKUs or how many different variations? It's a lot. Like what do you have the
A
number
lot.
of, or at least a ballpark of what you guys have in market right now?
Yeah, it's like a few hundred at least. Yeah. So
Yeah. So with these weekly recurring insights, right? Do you run them on a select few and then how much time is that saving? I know you talked about it a little bit more, but I can only imagine where if you have all these different SKUs and that are live and different variations, flavors, profiles, that kind of stuff, without having some sort of, hey, by the way, this is where we stand right now across a number
Mhm.
of them. Running back and doing it manually could be a little bit of a time suck and pain. So like, I'm just wondering, like, how many of ASINs are you typically running insights on and that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's like one a week-ish, I'll say. And we really started with like our multivitamin category. So we wanted to at least, contain a little bit of the chaos as much as we could, but make sure we also weren't limiting the platform in any way. We really just wanted to make sure that, whatever insights we can get out of it, we want to take as much as we can get, you know? Um, the polling aspect of it is really valuable for us in getting, like I said before, like just those raw impressions of how we're performing against others, helping to validate hypotheses that we have on our own strategies. So for us, it's just, having it on a recurring basis. We're constantly learning something new. And every week, I feel like we're just getting smarter at how we're setting up the polls.
It's amazing. And what's even more amazing, I had no idea that you guys had a license with Cocoa Melon for probiotic drops. So I think I'm going to be telling my wife about this and she's going to be purchasing some of these. So, okay, guys, that's a lot, right? So, Monica, I want to thank you for your time today and really just what's one final note that you can leave with folks about really how PickFu is empowering Mary Ruth to make better decisions?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to beat the dead horse, but it's just you have the capability to basically pull anyone you want to pull. Find the segment that you really want to look into, hone in on a particular product, and even just a particular product, a category. It could be as extensive as you want. There's no limit to however many polls you want to run. So Amazon is a beast. Selling on Amazon is constantly changing. You need to be at the forefront all of the time. And so any avenue where you can get more insight just to make your strategy better, you'd be crazy not to leverage it. And so we just thank you, PickFu, for the strategies you've already given us to help fine tune. And, we're looking to expand even more and take on more opportunities to pull more and find more and just, heighten our strategies to be even better. So yeah.
No, and we thank you for being an awesome user of PickFu as your org and then putting out such fantastic supplements and wellness products and delicious on top of that. And I know that if I was to pull up my subscribe and save portal, you'd be shocked. But yeah, guys, if you're watching, which we hope you all are, if not on the replay, you go to pickfu.com, get your free account set up. Doesn't cost anything to get set up at PickFu, pay as you go. We have pre-built polls right at pickfu.com/templates. And if you want to learn more about Mary Ruth's, and I'd be really shocked. If you don't know about Mary Ruth's, drop a comment and I'll be sure to school you on how great it is. You go right over to MaryRuthOrganics.com or just type in anything that related to what they sell. They're bound to pop up on Amazon and TikTok. Adrian, did I miss anything? Do we have any other questions before we kind of send off?
I don't think so. Yes, Elise, or hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right. We will share the slides in an email as well as the recording. So stay tuned for that coming later this afternoon. And I think we asked everything. Thank you so much, Monica.
Awesome.
Thank you
Thank you,
guys.
Monica.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.